This episode is brought to you by Plugra European-style butter, crafted for those who demand precision and exceptional results in the kitchen. With 82% butter fat and a slow churn process, Plugra gives you flakier crusts, fluffier cakes, and rich, melt-in-your-mouth pastries. Because great baking starts with great butter. Unlike standard American butters, which have only 80% butter fat, Plugra ensures the ideal moisture and fat balance so your recipes turn out just right every time. That's why professional chefs trust Plugra and home bakers love it. Plugra's slow churn process creates a smooth, creamy butter that gives dough a soft, pliable texture, making rolling, folding, and laminating effortless. Whether you're perfecting a buttery pie crust or layering a delicate croissant, Plugra helps you bake with confidence. Experience the difference for yourself. Find Plugra in stores near you or visit plugra.com. That's Plugra.com.
Hey everyone, Greg Benson here, and if you're a regular listener of The Speakeasy, you probably know by now that I've been working to bring 100% pure, actually good-tasting agave nectar to the United States for a minute, but I wanted to give you a bit of an update. I actually got to travel to the farm where these amazing plants have been growing for decades, and it was just a genuinely moving experience. I got to see these agave in their natural habitat and see what it means to Rogelio, the farmer, to be able to care for the descendants of the same agave that his grandfather was growing almost a full century ago. That's why I'm proud to announce Quixote Imports, a new venture that's dedicated to preserving these agave and, yes, still bringing in the same fantastic, earthy, lightly fruity agave nectar that's going to make you wonder why you've been wasting your time with the crap at the grocery store. Plus, our fans here at the Speakeasy can get free shipping at checkout with promo code SPEAKEASY, so don't wait. Head on over to QuixoteImports.com and see what agave nectar is actually supposed to taste like, and use promo code SPEAKEASY for free shipping. Salud.
You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock and roll, Lord. Knows that country music's gonna save your soul. The devil finds his groove in them rhythm and blues that sing. It's gonna get you, son, in the end.
Welcome back to the Speakeasy. I'm Damon Boelte.
I'm Sother Teague.
And I'm Greg Benson. And Sother, you have some breaking technological news to share with our listeners, isn't that right?
Well, yeah, but the crazy part is I don't know how breaking it is. It turns out this technology has been around for about a year, and it's pretty cool. It's very cool. It's called the Cool Can. Yeah, Damon loves the
Nice. I got
It's called the Cool Can, and it's a can, like a beer can, that has a chamber of water at the bottom of it, and then the can itself is 2 layers, and inside that layer is some chemical salts. And there's a button on the bottom of the can. When you press the button, the water is released into that layer. Those chemical salts have a reaction that cools the can down to 6 or 7 degrees Celsius, which is 42 to 44 degrees Fahrenheit. It takes about 7 to 10 minutes for it to cool that far, but then it'll hold that chill for 45 minutes.
And this is like essentially a beer cozy that like goes around like a beer or an RTD, right?
I mean, effectively, it's all one unit. It's still 100% recyclable, which I think is a key component to this little concoction. And again, the technology's popped up about a year ago. It's not in wide use anywhere.
So it's a can that you can. Say if you are an RTD producer, you can package your product in these cans, and then
that's the gist. Yeah. So these guys are.
I thought it was like a beer cozy that goes around like a can, like a general like 12-ounce can, and then it's like Back to the Future 2, where like
Yeah, no,
it's the self-drying jacket. It's kind of
exactly
like one of those
right.
things.
No, it's no. Again, it's a one unit that you press the button, chills your drink, you drink it, and then you recycle that can and you grab another one. I think that the crux of this technology would be that has the possibility to reduce costs of refrigeration by such a degree that it pays for itself, right? You think this is going to make my Coca-Cola, my can of beer cost increase, but they're predicting that if these get widely used enough, that it'll bring down costs based on the fact that people won't need refrigeration units as much. Right? Imagine your bar having all of your canned beers. I mean, again, it takes 7 to 10 minutes for them to chill, so it's not perfect but the idea is that less refrigeration is necessary for, say, like retail outlets, right? You can go into a retail place and grab a Coca-Cola off the shelf and then press the button, and 7 minutes later, you've got a cold Coca-Cola. So they don't
Well,
need
the key part there being 7 minutes later.
Yeah.
And I actually want to share another technological breakthrough in this field that I heard about. It's called ice.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 2 to 3 minutes, if you add these, it comes in cube and sphere and even spear form.
Oh, and pebble.
And you follow me here. You put it in your beverage, and then your beverage becomes cold. It's it's quite remarkable.
As the two of you know, and I've mentioned numerous times, I drink beer like an old man, and I do prefer like a shitty, hammock beer, like a Lone Star, etc., on ice. But generally speaking, I don't think the public prefers their beer on ice. So when we're talking about soft drinks, heck yeah, pour it over ice. But when we're talking about products like that you want to drink without ice, I think this is pretty incredible. I don't know. I was promised a flying car, and I didn't get that. But this is pretty cool.
This is the future that we have.
Yeah.
We have to deal with the reality that's around us.
What a time to be alive, guys.
Seriously.
Well, at least they came up with a clever name for the thing. Cool Can.
Okay, that's actually my major question about this. Is Cool Can spelled with C's or K's?
It's with C's, thank God.
Oh, I don't know. If there was a third word in there, that would be a problem. But I feel like, I don't know. I'm a big stand for the word cool with a K. Like, just have some fun with it,
I don't know.
And this is our last episode.
Yeah, we're canceled, everyone.
We done.
With a K.
Well, speaking of technological innovations,
let's go.
Technological financial innovations. We've got a bit of a first here on this show. I think we have Rob and Ryan from ASM Capital Partners here, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. And this is I don't want to misintroduce what you do because I'm conversational, not fluent in the finance world. Obviously, this is your playground more than me. Talk to us a little bit about what ASM Capital Partners is and how you define it.
Before I do, I just got to say, I've never waited more than 7 minutes to drink a beer.
That's the other problem with that technology. That's the other problem with that tech.
And I don't need it to last 45 minutes either.
7 seconds, probably is about right.
I think that's too long. I mean, I don't even wait 7 minutes for a cocktail, So just say it.
I mean, I would pitch back and say if I went and bought a 6-pack off the shelf, not in the refrigerator, I would have to put it on ice and I would have to wait some time. These I could put 5 of them on ice and press a button and have one in 7 minutes at least, right?
I think it works for like going to the beach.
Sure, camping.
If you got a long walk to the beach and you don't want to bring a cooler and a bunch of ice and stuff. I mean, I get it, But otherwise.
So American single malt is kind of an interesting concept. And what it came about is single malt. When we talk single malt, we're talking single malt barley. So in Scotland, they make a single malt, and it's called Scotch. Irish has a single malt, right? We all know Jameson's, and then this new single malts coming out of Japan. The last 7-8 years have been real hot. Australia's making some pretty good single malts. So the government, the TTB, the governing body of the United States, said, hey, with a little push from me and some others, said, hey, why don't we make an American single malt? How come we can't have that as an official category? So somebody finally smartened up in the TTB and said, yes, let's do it. And so we have a new category that just got created and ratified January 19th. It's an official, and it's kind of a big deal because you have to go back. Okay, flavored whiskey was this one, right? Didn't have any flavor. I actually created a brand called Cabin Fever. It was turned out to luckily be the first flavored whiskey out there. But prior to that, you have to go back to 1933 for them to do a whiskey category, and that's bourbon. So now we have a new category called ASM, American Single Malt. And it's from an opportunity, not only in the United States and having just the consumers another thing to choose from when they go into that single malt aisle, but also the export. I don't think any country in the world is in a better position to put a dent in this $36 billion industry in the United States between the price of the grain, the price of the barrels, our aging. And what's really cool is we're finding we're not just copying Scotch. But we're seeing some of these distilleries coming up with their own little tweaks and their own little renditions of it. We just tried one from Corsair. It was a triple smoke. So not a peated smoke, just a regular smoke, smoked it. And then whether it's from Texas or Colorado or Oregon or the East Coast, we're seeing different types come out, and I'll tell you what, it's really great to see this ingenuity happening in the United States.
So and I mean, of course, you're gonna get, so many different, as you mentioned, like unique flavors based on where you make the single malt. I mean, there was that one that I've been trying to get my hands on for a while from Tasmania that won world's best single malt a little while ago. So I imagine that the flavors that are, what's up?
Starward?
It was someone else. I can't remember the name of it. I just remember it was the first place outside of Scotland or Japan that had ever won world's best single malt. And if you're listening and want to come on the show, we would love to have you. But obviously you're going to get a lot of really cool, interesting flavors coming out of American single malt. So that's the ASM part of your name. Talk to us about the Capital Partners part of that. What's your, I don't know, what's your angle, I guess is kind of what I'm asking.
Absolutely. And Rob started out of the gate with the exciting opportunity, right? And that's American single malt. So we've taken, if you think about the whiskey market and you walk into your local bottle shop, you see that brown liquor and liquid on the shelf. What a lot of folks don't realize is the time and the maturation piece that goes into that, right? It comes out of the still clear. Something needs to happen with it for 3, 4, 5 years. And then it goes into the bottle, gets the exciting label, and hits our lips, 3, 4 days later. So what happens to that maturation period? Well, on one side, you have the distilleries. We partner with those distilleries around the U.S. We buy the new fill distillate, and we essentially take on that maturation period, which is important because we want the distilleries to focus on making that top quality drop, right? We want to drive the revenues to them up front, not have them worried about, okay, my storage and insurance. That's what we at ASM Capital Partners takes on. And then we're that capital bridge between the distilleries and the brands. About 60, 70% of the brands out there are sourcing their liquid, right? And they might be distilling some, they're adding their unique quality and their story, whether it's through barrel finishing, whether it's through regional distillate, and then they put it in the bottle and get it out to us. They want to focus on marketing, right? They want to focus on what celebrity do I have coming on and endorsing our brand? What is the story that we're telling? So we're taking on this supply of American single malt with this huge supply-demand imbalance right now, right? Rob mentioned we just got the ratification in January of this year. So there's new growth and innovation that we're seeing, and that's the most exciting part. For us, we're taking on the supply to really elevate this entire new category, working with the brands, working with the distilleries.
So you guys are effectively this is futures. You're doing futures of whiskey. Does that make sense?
Carrying that inventory between the distillery, who the poor distilleries, they don't have the capital. They'd like to be running
right. That's too burdensome, right?
They don't have that money. The brands, when I created my brand, my first year I had 2,500 cases. My second year I had 37,000. I didn't have all that inventory. So brands can't predict how much they're going to need 5 years from now. So when, like Brian said, when you go to a liquor store, 70% of those whiskey brands, only a portion of their liquid is actually their own. They have to buy base, and it's just an industry standard on this side of the industry that nobody else really knows.
Mm-hmm. So we're essentially acting as the capital bridge between those two sides of the industry to finance the maturation period of the whiskey and make sure it has a good solid home, good quality control as it's going from clear spirit to the end product that the brands are going to want.
That's really interesting. There's certain news outlets like the spiritsbusiness.com, that they get into a lot of kind of the back of the house, kind of higher up stuff, all the things that you don't see in media, essentially, or at the bar or on the shelf, and there's a lot more to the biz than, as you said, linking up with a celebrity to do promotional work, and especially, the three of us were all like New York business owners, and I can tell you that those distilleries, having a distillery in New York City, just having the real estate to warehouse barrels while they don't make you any money, that's where this is handy, right? That's kind of the idea.
That's a burdensome expense. I think that like what came to my mind immediately was, the old phrase, vodka pays the bills. A lot of whiskey houses will make vodka because they can make that and get it in a bottle to sell pretty rapidly while they're making whiskey that then has to rack and sit for 4 years or more, right? But so you're taking that burden off so that they don't have to pay attention to making a product that they don't necessarily really want to make just to make the bills. Is that sort
You
of
actually
some
nailed it. That's exactly it. Yeah. And what we're trying to do, we have a responsibility, we think, to grow the American single malt category as a whole. We don't know who's going to win the brand war, and we don't get into that side of it. But we want American single malt to be on the world stage. So things like we're working with duty-free shops, right? We'd like to have every duty-free shop at any major airport in the world. Okay, you're going to go in, you're going to see the Macallans, you're going to see the Lagavulins, we know that, right? You're going to have the Scotch section, you're going to have an Irish section, you're going to have a Japanese section. We want an American single malt section. 8 brands, 10 brands of American single malt brands. So we want to sort of, elevate that category, both in the United States and export.
Well, so talk to me about how this is landing with the people that are buying the whiskey once it's been aged. Sort of what are the, I mean, you've said that you're fairly brand agnostic. You're kind of a booster for the category as a whole, which I think in your position, it seems like a smart play. And also it seems like that would just be the best way to have a wide range of business. But when the folks buy the whiskey that's finished aging from you, kind of what is that process like? Do they taste it? Do they blend it? What happens once it leaves your warehouse?
Well, we get certain specifications, right? We do get like so brokers contact us, brands contact us, and distilleries contact us, and we'll get requests like, I need something from the West Coast. That's all right. So when we go around the country and commission distilleries. So we'll go to a distillery and go, hey, look, we're going to buy, we want to buy 5,000 barrels of you, and we're going to own it, and you're going to store it for us, and we're going to pay the storage and the insurance, and when we need it and have to harvest those barrels, we're going to do it, and we're going to unload it. But we also want for you to do about 700 of those barrels, and you don't have to pay for them now, but you have rights to those barrels, and you take those barrels on an options contract, and you can take those. So these distilleries that we go around the country and commission, when we get requests for certain products, it's important. One, geographic. We want to be in different areas. Pot still, column still. Is it going to be ex-bourbon barrel? Is it going to be an ex-wine barrel? Is it going to be finished in a port cask, in a sherry cask? Is it going to be peated, lightly peated, heavily peated? And now we're starting to see some cool stuff like smoke, not even peat smoke, just regular smoke. So yeah, we got a lot of customized, and that's sort of the juggling that we do. And if we can give a lot of them, they'll take the base, and they're happy to take the base that we sell them, and then they do the magic, right? They'll finish it in a port cask, or they'll smoke it. So they do certain things to it after they get it from us. But things like geographic regions and things like that, rum cask finish. So yeah, we do get a lot of special requests, and we try to balance that out as best we can.
So I want to ask a little bit of logistics and timing. This category you said just got ratified a couple of months ago in January, and you're already brokering these kind of deals. So again, this is all futures, right? Because again, this stuff has to mature for numerous years. Like, how do you even begin to do the math and forecasting on all these sorts of things?
Well, we have the export play, right? So we don't know how big it's going to get in the United States. Nobody does. Nobody has that crystal ball. It's growing. It's the fastest growing category there is. So that's exciting. But what if we overshoot our target, right? What if we make more barrels and it's not a killer, because the barrels are just the whiskey's just going to get smoother and more tasteful, more flavorful year after year. So it's not a catastrophe if the barrels have to sit another year or two. But we always have the export play. And so we always have that as our backup. So that makes our investors happy.
Yeah, we let the exits really drive the acquisition side. When I put my portfolio manager hat on and think about the investment side, we have our exits lined up and it's a diversified play. So it's not all going to domestic brands. It's not all going to exports. And there is a small sleeve of what we acquire that's aged and maturing stock already, right? So when we work with a new brand and they need that supply, well, we already have 2, 3 through 7-year-old barrels that the fund has acquired that we could start to build that supply line and that pipeline to them. But everything we do on the acquisition side is around how we're going to exit that.
So one thing that really fascinates me about what you guys are doing is the fact that you're looking at you're approaching this, like you just used the word portfolio. You're approaching it like kind of building out a stock portfolio instead of and I guess it's the thing that I'm driving at is that it seems like it's a modality of thinking. It's a way of envisioning the business that isn't necessarily looking at it as like, oh yeah, we run a bonded warehouse, essentially a fancy, storage unit for whiskey. You really are kind of approaching this from a very, Wall Street minded place. And I guess I would love to hear you all talk a little bit more about that and why you think that's just kind of the right mentality to look at that. Because if I totally agree that I think this is a brilliant move because you're taking onerous cost off of some pretty small businesses.
I
But
want to know
if I were to start this myself, I would never, ever, 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 ever have thought, oh, I'm going to run this like a stock portfolio. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
And which horse are you betting on for the Kentucky Derby this year? Because there's like.
I think if I tell you how it's done, I think it'll help you appreciate how we got here. So my brand, Cabin Fever, I created a flavored whiskey called Cabin Fever. 2009, there was a whiskey shortage, and I got cut off. So instead of these big whiskey suppliers selling base and allocating to every little guy, they cut off the little guy. And so now me and a bunch of other craft guys were completely out of business because we couldn't get our base. So it just pissed me off so much that it just never sat up. And it's really revenge, right? It's like you guys just cut off the little you didn't care, and there was a whole craft resurgence going on. So after I sold my brand at Diageo, I had 3 years with Diageo that I had to, I was non-compete. But I knew what I was going to do after I got out of Diageo, and that was create storage for barrels to help with the craft guys, not the big guys, the craft guys. And so that just evolved from, all right, I could only afford to put in so many barrels in this storage unit. So then it would evolve to, all right, let's get investors to invest. They'll be more than happy to carry the inventory, make a nice percentage for themselves. The brands are more than happy to pay a little bit extra, knowing that they don't have to buy all those barrels themselves. The distilleries are happy because they get to keep their stills chugging away. So it just seems to work for everybody. I don't see anybody getting, even though you talk about Wall Street and everybody, somebody's getting screwed over. It's not the case with us. We're more coming from the.
I think it's the opposite, Rob. I think when we work with distilleries and we work with brands, I'm the guy that they don't want to talk to. They want the brand experience. They want the whiskey guys. I think there's about 110 years of experience between 4 out of 5 partners just in the whiskey industry.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do it. We look at it from taking care of people more than we do. And it just so happens to align and correlate with investors wanting to carry inventory, which is unusual, right? It's not a normal thing for them. They're usually doing real estate deals or, buying casinos or something. So when we go to an investment institution, and then we explain it because really, right, when we fill up a barrel of whiskey new make and we wait 5 years, never in the history of the world has that 5-year-old after 5 years been worth less than when we first put it in.
Right.
So, I mean, it starts with that. And then they start perking up like, ooh, we can make a little bit of money on this. The brands are happy. The distillery's happy. So yeah, we just sort of orchestrating it. That's all we're doing.
How chilling is it to your potential investors, this ongoing talk of tremendous tariffs and other countries looking down on American whiskey? For instance, in Canada, they pulled all American spirits off of their shelves in retaliation to what's going on with the current administration. Is that?
Well, for the export, right? For the export, we're wait and see. India, right, who's the largest consumer of a single malt in the world, lowered theirs, so that's good. But as far as in the United States, and where that's like 97% of the American single malt right now is staying in the United States.
Okay.
So it's actually, I mean, I don't want these tariffs, to be honest. But if we do
Nobody
tariffs,
does.
English and Scotland high, then they'll gravitate more towards American single malt. So that's a good thing. And that's not a win that I don't want to win that way. I don't want to get actually bump the American single malt numbers that way. But indirectly, it'll actually help us.
Yeah, more so than bourbon, American single malt as a category is defensively positioned for these tariffs, because if I'm an Isla drinker and I'm going to reach for Scotch in a tariff situation, well, I might rethink it when I'm already paying over $100 a bottle. Now it's $150, or am I going to get the American single malt homegrown at $75 for just as high a quality product?
Mm-hmm. But without that brand recognition, how I mean, of course, you can't predict. As you said, you don't have a crystal ball. I got one around here somewhere. How I'm in a junk closet, basically. How do you? I guess my question is like, you're right. If I'm a consumer and that tariff is pretty heavily levied against my favorite brand of Scotch, but that's the key word, brand. I'm brand loyal at this point, right? I've been drinking this liquid for, whatever, maybe all my life since I was a young man. I put it in my own field here and I say, I love Overholt rye whiskey. It's a known thing that I'm a big fan of that whiskey. If the tariffs were high, I think I'd just bite my lip and pay the fucking price. What's going to encourage me to try a brand new product that I may not have that loyalty or that trust of? How do you... I mean, that's all marketing and navigation, but like, how do you approach that? Especially again, and I know it's timely, and you probably are devoting a lot of back of the house work to this notion, but like these tariffs are gonna make a change in the landscape.
I might
right?
piggyback on that and maybe kind of answer a little bit, Sother, and correct me if I'm wrong. But with this being a new, appellation DOC, category that's recognized by the TTB in the United States, the American Distillers, like all this stuff, there's going to be more. You're going to start seeing more American single malt, especially with, even when you go to like Whiskey Fest, you've been seeing it for years. But, a lot of people go there for the bourbon and rye, right? So, but then there's I think that there is a new kind of market consumer in the United States that wants to try American single malts, and you'll start to see this. Like, this is my prediction. Like, you're going to start seeing a lot more like Whiskey Fests that specifically focus on American single malts, and not so much have it be the third thing behind bourbon and rye. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, there's one big national retailer that I'm thinking of. About 12 months ago, I went into one locally in Florida. A week later, I was up at one in New Jersey. There was maybe 3 SKUs of American single malt on the shelves. Fast forward to now, there's 8 to 12 at any given location. And we're seeing, and after discussing with them, we're going to see hold up dedicated shelf space, really, that creeps into a little bit of Scotch, a little bit of Irish, a little bit of bourbon, and it's going to be all of these innovative brands and the growth that you just talked about. Exactly.
I think the demographic has a lot to do with it too. I have an uncle that if he goes into a liquor store and all he drinks is Macallan, so he's going in and you could put the Fountain of Youth right next to that bottle. And he won't even look at it. He'll just put the Macallan and walk away. And there's people like that, right? My uncle's a perfect example. But then there's people who I think are younger, and you could have the best whiskey in the world, right? It's that one in Tasmania. I was actually there about a month ago.
Lark, right?
And
Sullivan's Cove is the name of it. Right?
The next week, I want to try something different. And that's where I'm seeing a new younger generation. It's not necessarily it being the best. It's they want to experience something new. We just bought one the other day, triple barrel out of a pot still. It's right over there. We went into Total Windward Geeks. We go into these liquor stores, and there's 6 new ones. We buy all 6, and we test them out and we try them out. So I think that younger demographic is open to it, and they're willing to make the jump. And no matter what, it's not going to happen overnight.
Yep.
But it's coming.
Do you think that for instance, like you mentioned earlier about like celebrity partnerships, or even like not even like as a brand ambassador, but like with a namesake for it, anywhere from like Ryan Bingham, Bingham's bourbon, to like Beyonce with her uh was this called Sir Davis, right? Do you think with that, because I feel like there's going to be it's the market play for a lot of celebrities has been tequila as probably the first number one, which you can't go wrong with the base ingredient for the number one selling cocktail in the world, the margarita, but then, you're starting to see like, I mean, Chris Stapleton's working with Buffalo Trace. You've got like all these celebrities who are obviously, like people like Casamigos, right?
Dolph Lundgren vodka, as we talked about last week.
Vodka last week. Yeah, exactly.
Hard cut.
I mean, do you think that's a marketing play? I mean, surely it is, but there hasn't been too many American single malts. The only one I can think of would be Few Spirits did there was a band called Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. They did they did an album on vinyl with their it's called like Motor Oil is that expression, and it's if I remember correctly, it is a single malt, and there's some twist on it. But I guess what I'm asking is, are you seeing? I know that it's a good marketing play, but are you starting to see more celebrities kind of jump on with single malts, American single malts?
No, it's not really what we're looking for. It's not really that's the brand's job, sort of thing.
Right.
Right.
I pay extra not to have a brand, a famous person.
I hear you, and that's a funny thing too. It's like a lot of people are getting kind of fatigued by celebrity involved spirits and wine and everything else.
Yeah, we're working with one celebrity. I have an NDA because I can't say big name, but and I like the only reason why I work with him is because he's actually doing stuff. He's actually designing the bottle, actually designing the label, actually. So I appreciate. But if somebody came to me and said, I want to slap my label and my name on a bottle and sit back and get my royalties, I'll say I wish you the best, but it's not something I'm going to get involved in.
Right. That's more the marketing of the brand.
Separate as far as the let the brands do whatever they do. And some want to get go and parasite themselves on to famous people. That's fine. But I'm more of an do it on your own merits personally. But I don't really have an opinion either way. However they want to grow their brand, it's fine with me. We're here to just support them.
And there will be brands that win and lose. I think that was the biggest when I first sat down with you about 4 or 5 years ago, how hard it is and the risks involved in betting on a brand. Mm-hmm. Right? Our ASM Capital partners were really isolated from that risk, right? If out of the 250 something brands that we work with right now, if one of them falls, there's 249 behind them that need high quality distillate.
Right. And you're coming at it from a place of like stewardship of the liquid and the barrels and the future of American single malt. Like you said, let the brands do what they'll do, but you're almost more like QC for the future of the category, basically.
Yeah. We want to make sure they have enough liquid when they need it. Really, that's what it comes down to. And yes, we have over 100 years experience. So yes, we do help them. I want to get them on a shelf in a duty-free shop in Sydney, Australia. So, my job is to sort of grow that brand and help them in any way we can. But I don't like meddle in their sort of marketing plan. It's whatever they do, and we're here to help them in any way we can. And we sort of some people want advice, some people want and need help, some people have a great idea and they're 100% behind it, and we're like, you go, just give us a call when you need more liquid. So really, that's what it comes down to.
So you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to go back to. You talk about when you're brokering a deal with a distiller, you said you want to get 5,000 barrels from them, but then you encourage them to take 700 of those barrels themselves to make something. So you're going to broker those other barrels off to someone to make the single malt, and then what are you encouraging them to do with those barrels for themselves?
Well, those are barrels they'll need for themselves for their own brand,
Mhm.
right? Then they might need more, but then if they do need more, they're taking brand barrels that they made themselves, which
Right.
they feel more comfortable with, and they feel comfortable with the amount. They think they're going to need, that 500 barrels, right? They don't know, but they think. Uh, the options contract is nice for us because we go to a financial institution and say, "Hey, we have a hedge on your investment.
Mhm.
These are spoken for. This distillery is going to buy them after a certain amount of time. It's an agreement, and so that makes them feel a little more warm and fuzzy about the investment, because we have to make the investors feel warm and fuzzy as well, not just the distilleries. So they like that options contract part, but they also like the options, the other stuff, that the other barrels that are tied to the options contract, because we're going to sell them at market price 4 years from now, which is going to be a heck of a lot higher than the options contract that we made. So the options contract, they're doing 15, 17%. And then the open market, they're probably doing 30, 35%
per year,
per year.
annualized. So it's really, we've taken this tried and true barrel investing thesis that, if you look at different markets, has been around for well over 100 years. It's the opportunistic upside really that comes with American single malt being a brand new category, right? So we have the hedge in place on these options contracts that Rob spoke about. And then you have the return premium and all of that upside in bridging that supply and demand gap, this being that brand new category.
Well, and this is what I think is really interesting about the business that you all have started, is that it sounds, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't have investors in the business as a whole. You get stocks of barrels and you go to investors there and say, hey, you get, the business in general is not a thing that you have someone invested in the whole company, the whole of ASM Capital Partners, but you get people who invest in individual lots of barrels, which I think is a really interesting way to approach this.
Yeah, that's the fund owns the barrels, and we're the GP and they're the LP. So, but the fund owns the barrels. Yeah,
they're investing in the underlying barrels, right? So again, it goes back to really financing the maturation period that historically neither distilleries or brands wanted to be a part of.
I imagine that's kind of a fun pitch to the LPs, right? Because I mean, I work with a decent number of finance folks in my day job, and the LPs, they love what they do. Obviously, they're always very enthusiastic about it, but there's not always an enthusiasm for the product that's being made. People are more enthused about like the founder or the investment or the possibility or like the disruptive capability of whatever it is that the GP is doing. But I imagine that when you say, hey, you have a chance to invest in whiskey, some people are pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, they're really interested in the journey. So we give them updates, right? Like, hey, we just came back from Indonesia, talked to the second largest distributor in Asia. And then we give them, we did this, we did that. And so we give them these updates, and they seem to be generally interested in the journey that we're taking together. And they flat out say that, we're not really interested in updates from, most of our, clients, but we are interested in yours, so they really kind of look forward to our, our releases when we do it, that's sort of an information release to them. And that's been kind of encouraging.
Your emails actually get opened, unlike everyone else's.
Right. Well, it's like an experience, right? Like that's what we do on the end of the trail here. We own bars. We create the experience of the drinking of the product, but you're sort of somehow encapsulating an experience into the investment in the product.
Yeah, we get investors. They all want to go through the due diligence process, right? I think that's incredibly important. But I was in real estate and other alternatives. Never have I had a prospective investor say, "Yeah, I want to get out and tour this building with a hard hat." We have them filling barrels, going into the fund. We get, we like that experience piece. And then at the end of the day, it all boils down to, okay, well, I've been here. I could see it. I could smell it. I could touch it. I could taste it. But it's really not that different than a real estate deal or any other type of investment that I'm looking at. But it's that journey that we want them to be a part of to really educate and help them understand. And it's fun.
Exactly. And, I thought it was going to be Wall Street number cruncher, just nerds, kids I used to maybe like rough up in high school or something, right? They're actually really cool people.
Yeah.
I don't know why I had this bad thing about Wall Street, but the people that we meet, the investors, they're generally, fun about it. They like the journey that we're taking. They're generally interested in our investment, and not just from the monetary aspect of it. They're actually interested in what we're doing and how it's coming along. So they're rooting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I can tell you in my experience as a New York bar owner and the host of this show for 15 years, I've seen a lot of and worked with a lot of, some as partners, people who move from Wall Street into distillation and spirits ownership, and it's like, yeah, well, first of all, people in Wall Street drink a lot, but there's that. But I think people in New York just drink a lot in general. But it's a fun industry to be in, and there are, I say this all the time, especially to young bartenders who are trying to figure out, like, how do you get into radio? How do you get into journalism, writing for magazines? How do you open a bar? How do you become a brand ambassador? I'm like, be an author or whatever, like, there's a billion ways to be in this industry. And for sure, this is one that I never heard of that we're talking about today. And that just adds more, just an extra line item to the list of, just opportunities in this industry that, shit, you guys figured it out and started doing it. And I'm sure that, like, it doesn't matter what side you are or what department you're in this industry. It's like, it's always fun. And so to follow along with that journey is really cool. I mean, I've been on the distributor side, importer side, exporter side, like, I'm a producer and supplier now as well for another company I just joined. And, like, it's like, it's just all fun. Yeah. And the thing is that you get to taste some whiskey every once in a while. Maybe you show up. Like, I think it's what's cool about that too is, like, there was a point where, like, going to, like, whiskey fest around the country where I started seeing more. It became this thing, and it was about the late 2000s, and it was like, it used to be industry people, and then it was like enthusiasts started coming out for them, and it was impressive to me that, like, it was like, oh wait, so it's like the way that wine country, I live out in the Bay Area, and so, like, in Napa and Sonoma, it used to be very agriculture. You had to be in the business to go around, and now you see the tasting rooms and the wineries, and you're just like, oh well, this is geared towards consumers, and it used to be like, the people who worked at this winery would go to that winery and drink, and vice versa, So it's kind of cool to see how, like, and I think, to be honest with you, I mean, we've said this a bunch of times on this show, but I think a lot of it, what's cool about the consumers of spirits, specifically, people who they get enthusiastic about a certain type of spirit, like an American single malt. You can kind of trace it back to that time, and, like, right at the turn of this last century, where it was like the cocktail was really coming back, right? Craft cocktails. And so that was like the gateway to get a lot of people into things like bourbon and rye whiskey and good gin and mezcal, and especially single malts, And so, like, you have that cocktail and you're like, wait, what is at the base of this? And you're like, oh, this is Balcone's Baby Blue or Brimstone, something like that. With the mesquite, smoked, as you were saying before a couple times. And then you're like, well, can I try that on its own? And the bartender should always say, hell yeah, you can. And then next thing you know, you're a brand loyalist to this Texas-based whiskey company that you've never heard of before, right? So that's on a smaller scale. That's hand selling at one person to one person. But, I see the big growth of it. Like I said, the way that the consumers have started coming into those festivals. And I think it's even more than that. It's just like the amount of information that's out there, and it just like you said, the journey. it's like you get into one and then you're like, oh, well, what else is like this? And it's like 20 years ago, like I'm referring to, there weren't that many. And now it's like, it is a category that's big enough, it's large enough, as you said, walking the shelves in the big stores. It's like, oh, there's actually quite a few to pick from. And, between shelf talkers or the staff being trained on it or going to your favorite bar and they have it there, it's like, it's a really exciting time for American single malts. And they're not American scotches. I think that's kind of what you were trying to say earlier. It's, just in the same way that, trying to explain to a customer at the bar or at the retail shop about Japanese single malts. It's like, it's not Japanese scotch. Okay. It's its own thing, but it's a single malt, and it's the closest thing I can think of to like kind of describe it. And Greg, you could probably speak more to this, but like when you're talking about single village mezcals, it's so like of its own place and production style. And like, it's a really, I mentioned balcones, like they really do their own thing, and so, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like mezcal, like real mezcal when you're rolling around Oaxaca, right, Greg?
I mean, I'm not really sure where the question was in there.
Well, I mean, I tend to ramble. That's why I started this show, because, I write an article for Bon Appetit and they're like 500 words and I give them 5,000. But, the thing is, I'm just saying, like, I feel like right now what's really cool and exciting about American single malts is that you can really get a sense of terroir, or just like someone's, their style and their personality, and so, and that's going to grow and grow, and it's going to, expand and, and then
I take a lot of satisfaction from personally is really, and I know it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's American pride, right? When I go into distilleries and I'm meeting the master blender and the master distiller and see what they got going on, and how, how important it is to them, and how they articulate different mash bills, and how they and what they're going for, and the taste, and what you're looking for, and so we taste it with them. And they say you're looking for the more rolling flavors because we have a pot still, and it's gonna flavors gonna, and when I used to go to Scotland a lot, and in Ireland, and visit these distilleries and talk to their masters. Now I come to see in America and seeing these guys doing the same sort of mash bills, but they're putting their own take on it, and there's a sense of I don't know, American pride, and I see it, and they have a sense of pride in their own liquid. And then when you go out into a store and you see that brand in the store, and somebody grab that bottle enthusiastically, and for me knowing where that brand and who actually made it and who actually held those barrels and who actually made that, that's for me, I take a lot of satisfaction in that, because and we're all Americans, man. We're all into this together, and so Scotch has one, Irish, nothing against them. I drink them. Japanese, Australia has their own, but America has, now we're in the game, and I know we're going to be getting some negative feedback from Scotland. That's the way they are. It's all right, but
you're telling me the Scottish are going to complain about something? That doesn't sound like them.
No, stick with the weather, guys. But no, I think
I'm Scottish. I can say that. I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
So I imagine that that's a big boost for the people that are investing in these barrels too, because like, again, I work with a lot of GPs and LPs. By the way, quick primer for folks that tune in to listen to us BS about cocktails and rum and are like, what's all this finance stuff? GPs, it stands for general partners. They invest in founders. LPs, limited partners, they invest in the GPs. So that's kind of the way that ladder works. That's a criminal oversimplification, but just very basically, that's kind of what we're talking about here. And I imagine a lot of the folks that are investing in these barrels are motivated by what you were just talking about. I work with this one GP who he says it's a joke. I'll believe it, but when I see it, but he says that after what he just started a new venture, he's like, after this, I'm going to become a barista. He's like, I want to do something like physical. I want to work with my hands, and I imagine that is kind of a nice draw for these folks, right? I imagine that is it sounds like a story they'd like to be a part of.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, that resonates with me wholeheartedly with my journey from the boring institutional asset management to getting into whiskey and spirits investing about 5 years ago. I mean, when I sit down and I open one of these brands bottles and I pour it into my glass and I can taste that it was aged in elevation in the Rocky Mountains in the United States, that's the exciting piece. So you sit the investors down and the potential LPs and you walk them through that journey and you end it with a tasting, a light bulb goes off, right? And it's also, again, fun to do. It's the best research and development and due diligence I've done is tasting whiskey in the last 50 years.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, you're not trying to convince people to invest in a new lettuce.
Yeah.
Although I will tell you, there's this exciting new opportunity out there. It's called the Cool Can.
Cool Can.
You're going to want to open up your wallets for this one, guys.
That.
So I really like the what you're saying here. Like, I'll just put it in like simpler terms too. Is like opening a distillery or a brewery or a winery. Really, I mean, we're talking about agricultural products, you know, and I think people lose sight of that. And it really is like building it up into a business from agriculture, you know, and that to me is like part of the American dream, as you were talking about. You know, it's like it really is part of that, like making something out of, you know, very little and growing it to this space. You know, like seeing some of these distilleries nowadays, I'm just like, and we're, you know, I saw Tito's vodka. I saw his spot 30 years ago, and it was a shack in the middle of nowhere, you know, outside of Austin, and see how that brand just blew up, you know. But to see like someone just do it and like take out, you know, lots of time out of their life, and you know, but more specifically on the whiskey side, seeing like just, you know, something that takes time and passion and patience, really, too. That's a big part of it. You know, because you're not only like waiting for the whiskey to mature to where you can actually sell it, but you're also on the side of like being patient to see how that market's going to go and if it's even going to last. I think it is, by the way, but it's kind of a cool thing. So I do actually want to ask you. We'll talk about it later, but I do want to know who you're betting on for the Kentucky Derby this year. And you talked about those casinos, and I want to know which one has the house that pays out more.
Yeah.
But also, you know,
being in the industry 25 years, you get to see things before they happen a little bit. That grants you a little bit of a crystal ball you were talking about earlier. And I seen some things happen before they happened. I wasn't in a position to take advantage of them at the time. But so when I saw the single malt thing, because we were thinking about elevating, my son Hunter is in the finance, and him and Ryan used to work for a company that did retail investing. So a doctor, a lawyer, business owner would buy 5 or 10 barrels. Now we just do finance institutions. It's an institutional fund. But prior to that, they would just buy, a couple barrels here, a couple barrels there, and now we just elevated it to the institutional side, the next level. So that's really all we did is make that jump. But we didn't know what we were going to do, right? We didn't know if we were going to do all whiskeys, maybe add some rum into it, maybe do some tequila into it. And we kept thinking American single malt is going to be coming. American single malt is going to be coming. So why don't we get ahead of it? And, you talk about investing. It's always good to be early, right? If you could have bought all that inventory in 1933 in bourbon, right, and controlled that thing, you would have been, for decades, you would have controlled the market. We look at some of these other industries. If you can get in early, it's, I don't know nothing about it. I didn't know what GPs or LPs were like 3 months ago. But one thing I do know about investing is you want to get in early. You want to be the first one. And so we were the first. We're the only dedicated single malt fund. And we just had that, we're betting heavy on it. But we're really not betting on the American single malt or ourselves. We're betting on these guys that are out there killing it every single day. Mm-hmm. And they are so motivated to make the best product possible. And thank God we're not all drinking junk, right? We used to all drink junk, like, right. Some of the crap that we used to drink. Now we're actually drinking good stuff. The American palate, I think, has risen to a really,
100%.
really cool level.
I think this category speaks to that
Yeah.
specifically. Yeah.
Well, do you see yourselves? I mean, we're looking at our crystal balls and our tea leaves a lot on this episode, but do you see yourselves branching out of the American single malt category in the future? It sounds to me like maybe if I'm reading you right, maybe not, because it sounds like there's just so much diversity and so much creativity and inventiveness within just that category. You're at the very least never going to be bored, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of work to be done here, right? Rob mentioned one of our main goals is elevating the category as a whole right now. From the investment side, that could come in the form of other ventures that we do, real estate, infrastructure. Think of the rick houses, everything that goes into bringing this from new fill distillate to aged mature product that can go in a bottle. So that's how I would approach that question. And then
When my crystal ball tells me, I'll tell you.
Sounds good. Keep
I'll be over here looking at my magic 8-ball.
I think each one another a fond after this one. It's too much in its infancy to just shut it off after 5 to 7 years.
it's a long term.
Well, hey, if people want to follow along with you for these, I mean, this is usually the part of the show where we ask, what Instagram do you want to plug? But I don't know. I know that for people in the finance world tend to be a little bit. I know Benchmark doesn't even have a website, and that's like a big flex for them. But do you guys have an Instagram or a website or somewhere where people can follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. You could check out the website is asm.capital.
Okay, sweet. We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah. And I just, my message is keep an open mind. Next time you go into a liquor store, you see some American single malt brands. Hey, what the heck? What do you got to lose?
Give a new one a try.
Right.
Yeah.
Why not?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I still do.
One last thing. I was in Tasmania not too long ago, and I'm trying to think of the name. I went into that.
Sullivan's Cove.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. And it's an elderly couple that run it. Really nice people. And then, so just so anybody knows, Tasmania is an island off the coast of Australia. And it's basically the Kentucky of Australia. And the one thing that struck me while I was there is how many dead kangaroos are on the side of the road. Like every mile and a half, there's a
man.
kangaroo. They poor buggers suck at crossing the street. But other than that, if you ever get a chance to go, because it's little teeny weeny distilleries and same thing. It's just fun to see that passion. It's all over the world, and it's good to see it's going strong there, and we hope to revive it here as well.
You heard it here first, folks. If you like whiskey and hate kangaroos, Tasmania is the place for you.
Place for you. Yeah.
Well, Rob, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was really informative. A part of the industry we don't really get to see or talk about very much, so this was just great. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing all of your knowledge. This is very informative. Thank you.
Well, that is going to do it for us this week on the Speakeasy. But as always, be sure to tune into HRN for plenty more great programs just like this one. And if you want more from this great program, you can become a regular on our Patreon page, where that means you are going to get guest recipes from everyone that comes on. You are going to get sponsor-free listening. You are going to get a free cocktail kit from our friends at Shaker and Spoon every single month, delivered right to your door. And you can also see the videos of this podcast, which brings me to another good point. We have a YouTube page now.
That's right.
So you no longer have to become one of our regulars, even though you should, to see the beautiful faces that are on this podcast. And be sure to tune in next week when we're going to have a buddy of mine, speaking of mezcal, Gilberto Marquez of Illegal is going to be coming on to talk to us about what he's been up to. So be sure to tune in for that. But for now, until next time, cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
So you don't shun the devil with your rock.
The Speakeasy is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food and drink radio supported by you. Keep in touch at heritageradionetwork.org/subscribe.